join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Good to see you all here. And hello to our millions of YouTube followers. Thank you for joining us. Hello, Lisa. Hello, Bella Ray. Good to see you. So much of this practice is about learning to be comfortable in what is typically Hey, so all of you who are like hiding in the back, do you really just want to stay there, or can you come up and take these chairs? It's up to you, but that way I don't have to scream. Just trying to bring people forward so I don't have to yell. But if you want to stay. So much of this practice is learning to be comfortable in what is typically uncomfortable. And that's a really interesting thing, because people come to learn about meditation and Buddhist practice very often because things in their life are not so comfortable. And so we get started on this path and on this journey because we want things to be gentler in our lives. And the most interesting dynamic occurs when this practice just kind of flips things on you. And it says, okay, I have nowhere that I can run to that's going to help me honestly face my mind. And what I mean by that is, even think about coming to places like this. Often we come to places like this, especially if you're brand new, and we spend so much time initially and even periodically throughout our journey judging, critiquing, questioning, wondering, do I like this place? I'm not even talking about here necessarily, anywhere. Any spiritual meditation, yoga type place. Do I like the place? Do I like the person leading? I've been doing this long enough. There's people who've loved sitting with me for years, and all of a sudden I challenge them, and now I'm like, they hate me, That's part of this journey. But all this practice is an opportunity to hold up a mirror and reflect back on the person that brings you so much joy and so much sorrow, chaos, difficulties. There are some cushions or seats somewhere. Feel free, anywhere is good. And so for me, it's been such an incredible opportunity with this practice to abandon the idea of thinking that someone else or something else or someplace else is going to bring me peace. And once you can truly wake up to that idea, you recognize that you don't have to go anywhere to be at peace in your life. How many of you truly recognize that you don't need to go anywhere to be at peace? Great. I mean, I'm still glad you showed up, don't get me wrong. Right? But we come to places like this as reminders, because very often, I said to somebody this morning, how can I sum this up? That people come, they're not, familiar with this path or this practice or anything like this. And I said, people come to places like this because they're really struggling with things internally at home, in their personal lives, in their family lives, in their work lives, and whatever it might be. And so they come to places like this. And then for me, part of my role is really just to redirect them back to looking at that place, that thing, that environment, that experience, because that's where you live. That's where for the most part, your time is spent. Now, hopefully that's not too miserable or depressing to anyone, right? I mean, you could always move in here and, we got plenty of cushions on the floor for you, but this is the practice. And I wish it was as simple as just like running somewhere and all of a sudden everything is great. But the beauty of this is, and then we'll start the meditation practice, is you don't have to rely on anything else or anyone else to be happy. How great is that? You don't have to rely on anyone else or anything else to be happy. And what I'm really addressing is the Buddha's first teaching about the cause of why we suffer. Because of our craving and our desire. And we spend much of our lives thinking that if we have just something else in our life, someone else in our life, some different car or piece of clothing or some material thing, that all of a sudden everything's going to be golden. But the one common denominator that's in all of those things is your mind and your heart. So learning to be comfortable with what is uncomfortable is a really important practice, and also incredibly difficult. But that's why we practice. So with that, we'll go ahead and start the meditation practice. Usually when I sit down here, I just end up rambling about something that just kind of triggered right before we sat down with the conversation. And hopefully it's relevant to some of you. But I'm sure you're already all happy, peaceful people all the time. And, you just wanted to come hang out here on a Saturday morning. So it's good to see you all. Thanks for being here, especially Chuck. We'll start with a meditation practice. A couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You will not float away. You will not have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all the chaos. Posture. You want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward. Same thing if you're on a chair or a bench. Just trying to keep the feet flat on the ground. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap. Allowing yourself to open up a bit. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator. It just means your leg hurts or you have an itch. Please don't sit there for 5 minutes wondering if it's okay to scratch your arm. It's totally okay. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, we'll settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice. Observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation, yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, simply sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, just as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. And you react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. That's what we get every day. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way we responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how we respond to every other 20-minute period of our day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. Meditation is not an escape, as I alluded to earlier. It is direct perception into this present moment. And very often, the present moment is quite difficult. So it's learning to be with things as they arise. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice free. It's sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But it is a practice. It's not a quick fix. It's not a 6-week course. It's not something you sign up for and after 3 months you get a certificate and you're all good to go. It is your whole life. It is every moment, your entire life, becoming aware of your own karma. Karma is action. Such a fundamental, core, and very often misunderstood teaching within Buddhism. Karma is not what you get. Karma is not what you deserve. Karma is not what goes around comes around. The word karma means action. And the Buddha taught very directly, we generate karma 3 ways: body, speech, and mind. Everything we think, everything we say, and everything we do has an impact in the world around you. So the practice is to become incredibly mindful of your karma. Think of karma as playing pool, if you've ever played pool, or just imagine a pool table and you hit the cue ball into the rack, and every time the cue ball goes into the rack, the ball is going to a different direction every single time. Your entire life, you are that cue ball. Every moment, right now, and every moment for the rest of your life. Every person, place, and thing you encounter, you leave an impact. The reason we talk about being mindful of our karma is because we want to be very cautious and aware, because our thoughts and our words and our actions are incredibly powerful. They can really shatter people. They can crush them. They can destroy them. They can also bring so much joy and happiness and beauty to people's lives and places' lives and things' lives. So very often in a Western culture, we hear this phrase, oh, that's their karma. And we throw that around as if that was something that they deserved or what was coming back to them. And that's not the proper use of the word karma. Think of karma as what you give. Are the thoughts and words and actions that you bring into your day filled with kindness and compassion and joy? Or are they filled with greed and anger and ignorance? That's the basic Buddhist teaching. Second noble truth, the cause of our suffering, as I mentioned earlier, craving, desire, very specifically called the three poisons. Greed, anger, ignorance. And the way to overcome greed and anger and ignorance is to practice generosity, compassion, and wisdom. It's very simple. Buddhist teachings are not complicated. They're really not. Often, especially if you're new, we tend to complicate it. 2,500 years, lots of countries, lots of languages, lots of books. But every day we have opportunities to just look in the mirror and ask ourselves, what do I think, what do I say, and what do I do? So, as always, it's for me tremendous joy and honor, and just beautiful to sit with all of you, to share my own unenlightened views of these beautiful teachings. So with that, I'll pause and really just prefer to open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind. And we use the rest of our brief time this morning, and I'll respond to your questions. And same thing to all of you in YouTube land. Feel free to... Oh, I see a question already from Bella. Good morning, Bella. Well, we'll just start with a gentle question. What is the concept of non-self? And what does Buddhism say about the ego? Great question. Such an important teaching to understand, that anytime you open up a Buddhist book and you read, a couple chapters, somewhere, most likely, especially if it's kind of introducing you to Buddhism, you'll come across the teaching and concept of non-self. And when you read this, there is no self. That can be really confusing, right? I mean, what if somebody just walked up to you and said, there's no you? Right, who's brand new to Buddhism today? This is day one. Nobody, really? Oh, that sucks. Oh, well. A bunch of advanced, enlightened folks filling the room here, right? Well, let's just pretend for a minute, right? Who's never heard the teaching of non-self? All right, there we go. I saw a hand, a couple of you, okay? So if I walked in, it's like, there's no you. What does that make you think? Confused. Confusion, right? It's mass confusion. Non-self. What do you mean? I've been looking at myself, calling myself. People have been calling me name my whole life. There's got to be the self, right? But Buddhism says clearly that there is no self. massive states of confusion when you read that, right? So to help Bella and the rest of us unenlightened folks understand, or at least I think begin to understand what non-self actually is and what it's teaching, is to recognize that. So if somebody, do you know 10 people in your life?
Yeah.
If you ask 10 of them to describe you, would they all describe you probably differently?
Yeah.
Right? Which one of them is right? All of them? Is that what he said, or somebody else? Somebody else said all of them. All of them, none of them, somewhere in between, right? So this is the idea, is that we physically exist, right? I mean, this teaching of non-self doesn't mean that you don't exist. It means that we exist quite differently from how we perceive ourselves to be. Non-self can be a little bit dangerous in a sense that, like, okay, well, if I don't exist, if there's no self, and I can just chop off my arm and it doesn't matter. If I chop off my arm, it's going to hurt. And I'm going to spend a lot of time in the hospital and a lot of pain. So don't do that. We exist. There is a self there, Bella. But that self is completely different from how you perceive yourself to be. You ever woken up and been in a really bad mood and just thought like your life is just over? Like, I just can't do this anymore? Anyone ever been there? I mean, you're all here, so there's a good chance some of you have been there, right? And then what happens? Oh my goodness, you're still around. You ever woken up one day and just said, today's a beautiful day. I'm just so happy I'm here. Karen, how long does that always last? Till something else happens, right? So our entire life is these moments of like, I'm in a wonderful mood. Everything is beautiful and great. My life is great. I'm great. Things are wonderful. I'll get to ego in a minute. And then something else happens and we're like, oh, my life sucks. It's over. I don't want to do this anymore. I'd rather just be done. Our entire life is somewhere along that spectrum. And in Buddhism, this idea of non-self, also you hear the word a lot talked about illusion. In the Diamond Sutra, they say life is just a dream, a bubble, an illusion. What that means to me, my understanding of that, is that this is the teaching of impermanence, that it's constantly changing, just like the 10 people who will describe you. All of their descriptions of you are based on their interaction with you. But does their interaction of you define who you are? No, it's just their experience. I could say the exact same thing to 10 people. Maybe 5 people love it and 5 people hate it. That doesn't change what was said, nor does it change anything about me. So our entire lives, we often tell ourselves, I'm a good person, I'm a bad person. Somewhere along those lines with those words. The teaching of impermanence tells us that we are always changing, we're always evolving. So to not attach to this idea, right? When I was born and, I'm in the crib or whatever, and I'm like crying and I'm like, wah. And my parents are like, Jeff. And they're like pointing at me and I'm seeing these things. And I'm like, oh, I guess those are fingers, right? Someone's calling me my name. So I'm like, okay, I'm Jeff. And my whole life, people call me Jeff. What is that? Is that who I am? No, these are just words and labels we put on people. So non-self, to me, very simply, is we are completely different from how we perceive ourselves to be, and we're also completely different from how other people perceive us to be. And trying to define the self is meaningless. The practice is to focus on what does that thing we call ourselves, what does it do? So we're just a vessel. We're just a shell. We exist for a period of time. We have this mind, we have this heart, we have this consciousness. We exist for a period of time. And what will we do with that very brief time that we have in this life? Come back to your karma. Come back to what my master first taught me, think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds. You should put that on like a bumper sticker or something. Right? Hopefully that helps, Bella. And to the second part of the question, what does Buddhism say about the ego? So I like to kind of remove Buddhism for a minute very often and just say, what do we say about the ego? It's there. And it can be really strong or it can be really gentle, right? But that ego is also tied to this perception of self. And when we can go beyond this sense of self that says me, 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 which is this ego that says I am most important, and abide in a place that says we are no more important than anybody else. It doesn't mean we're less important than anybody else, but we're not more important. Can we see family, friends, loved ones, strangers, enemies, no different than us? If we understand non-self, then we begin to understand that all we are is a series of causes and conditions, a life's journey of experiences. So we have an ego. I know for me, at least early on in Buddhist teachings, when I started, I was got wrapped up in this, I'm going to destroy the ego, as if the ego is not going to exist. Well, you know what I was using to try to destroy the ego? The ego that thought it was so great I could destroy the ego. That was ridiculous. And then after 2 years of trying that, all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute. I'm using this ego, which is huge, to try to destroy this ego, which is huge. Just try to do good things. And make life less about you and more about others. The practice of generosity. So, for me, the most important thing, Bella, and for anybody else about ego is to just recognize what role your ego plays in your life. Become aware of it. And learn to work with it. Right? I know in building a place like this for the last 15 years, my ego has played a huge part, because without my stubbornness, without my just, ridiculous drive and insanity, I wouldn't still be sitting here right now. So begin to understand how your ego plays out in your life, and try to manage it with an awareness. So hope that's helpful. Yeah.
So obviously, a big part of this practice is being present, accepting things as they are. You use an example sometimes of getting caught up in your stories and thinking about the future, like, oh, I'm hungry, I want a burrito, I want cookies. But I feel like it could be potentially wise to consider the future, to address fears about the future, to plan. So when is that an appropriate time versus just trying to be present and accepting the things as they are?
No, great question. A question around, for those who didn't hear, finding a balance, to kind of sum up or paraphrase, finding a balance in staying present and also planning for the future. Planning for the future is always wise. But here's the catch. So right now is your future from every moment of your past. 5 years ago, did you ever plan to be sitting here on a Saturday morning? No. Well, clearly your plan didn't work out. Right? Here's the thing about plans. Have them. Again, just to break it down very simply for anybody else who might be brand new, Buddhist practice isn't about I'm just going to sit and watch the world go by and do nothing. Have plans. If you don't have plans, your life's going to be really potentially not so great, right? Whatever that means to you and to everybody's individual plans. But when you plan, recognize that some of them will work out. Some of them won't. You ever plan for something and it just completely failed? You ever plan for something and it actually worked out 1,000,000 times better than you expected? So this is life. The challenge isn't so much, or not challenge, I don't want to say problem, but the something isn't so much the plan. The practice is to adjust and learn to embrace however life works out, regardless of the planning. Who here likes to control things? This practice is going to be beautiful and incredibly difficult for you, right? I mean, for me personally, I needed to have control of every situation and every strategic move for the next, 30 years of my life when I was 15 years old, right? That was at times incredibly successful and productive. And at the same time, it drove me absolutely insane. And 19 years later, I'm still sitting here doing this, right? So there's a balance. There's no direct answer to that, except for each individual to ask themselves, at what point is my effort to plan and control actually becoming an unhealthy thing for me? Because our attempts to control and plan can become very toxic to ourselves and those around us potentially. Because very often plans involve a lot of other people and places and things, and sometimes plans, other people don't always have the same plan. I'm just rambling now, but sometimes other people's plans aren't the same as ours. And that's really rough. So have plans for the future. Years ago, Evan, he was a graduate student at San Diego State at the time, at the old Buddha for You location. And similar question, he was an MBA student and trying to figure out like the rest of his life and his career while also getting an MBA and wanting to be a business person and make lots of money, but also really loved Buddhism. It was like, well, how do these two things line up? And the answer in brief was like, understand the intention behind what you're planning, right? He wanted to go be successful, make lots of money. There's nothing wrong with that. But were those goals, those plans, those intentions driven because his ego just wanted more? What was the intention behind it? So that's another thing with planning, is really looking at what's our intention behind our plans. So is that helpful? Yeah. Not easy. Yeah.
During meditation, you have thoughts come up.
Yes.
And you say you should drop them and go back to your breathing. But some thoughts are good thoughts, some are nasty thoughts. Does it really matter the quality of the thought, or either way
Sure.
you drop them? Because you also advise not to judge.
Yes. Which by labeling your thoughts just now, clearly you haven't taken my advice, Normal. So we got to work on that. The question around for those online here didn't hear it is, in essence, when I always instruct when during meditation thoughts arise to go back to the breath, and sometimes thoughts are, you say good thoughts or nasty thoughts. The Buddha would call them pleasant, unpleasant, right? The question really is what to do with those thoughts. The practice of meditation, right? For me, the essence of this practice, the Anapanasati Sutra taught by the Buddha, what's really the basis of the Zen Buddhist practice, is regardless of what the thoughts are, good, bad, or otherwise, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, recognize a thought and return to breath. Doesn't matter what it is. Now, the fact that we recognize a thought and that we've taken it one step further by labeling it, we're now giving a lot of fuel to that thought. Right? Because as soon as we recognize a thought and we say, oh, that's a pleasant thought, and then we start telling a story about, being in a pasture with goats.
That's a judgment.
Right? So now we're judging it as a good thought, and then not just for you, but for everybody. The idea then is like, okay, well, I'm just imagining myself out in the field playing with goats, and that's wonderful. What's wrong with that? Nothing's wrong with that. But that's not meditation. That's just thinking about hanging out with goats, baby goats, because they're cuter. Or you have an unpleasant thought, painful experience in your life. Thought arises, you have an unpleasant thought, and then you start thinking about that. And those are the ones we want to run away from, but then we're stuck, and now we're sitting there for 5 minutes, telling ourselves an unpleasant story in our head, and that's miserable. So the practice of meditation is to not label either of them and just return to breath. Now, again, in daily life, as you're going through your day, I'm not suggesting that you ignore these thoughts. We want to pay attention to our thoughts. But the practice of meditation isn't, again, in this practice, isn't the time to figure stuff out. It's the time to stop trying to figure things out. So many people spend most of their lives trying to figure stuff out. Again, kind of coming back to the planning thing. We could drive ourselves crazy trying to figure everything out. So if you're going to give yourself 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes to do a meditation practice, allow that to be a time where you're not trying to figure things out. You're just going to be and sit. So that's the practice. Very difficult. Other questions? Yeah.
Hi, Jeff. More
Hi.
comment. Nice to be with you and all.
Nice to be with you too.
So I really appreciated today because I have been coming in, noticing a lot of like being in the future, worry, planning, just the very thing we're talking about. And so what jumped out for me today in the meditation was the phrase concerned about nothing. And it felt so soothing, like, oh, that's right. In this moment, I can be concerned about nothing.
Yeah.
And that really felt like a gift of a reminder. So I just wanted to thank you for that. This was just such a beautiful practice. And it's nice to be live in community.
Yeah. Yes. Good to see you here. It's such a great. For those who didn't hear, the phrase Martina shared is during meditation that kept coming up to her was concerned with nothing. Right? Is that what you said? Yeah. Concerned with nothing. And yes, we do. We spend so much time worried, concerned, fearful of the future. And we don't know what the future holds. But as the Buddha taught, as a very simple practice, he taught very directly, there is birth, there is aging, there is sickness, and there is death. That's what's guaranteed for all of us. There's no escaping that. You know, we're born, we will age, we will get ill, and we will pass. Now, on that kind of track, there's also a trillion things that occur in our lives that can bring us and others tremendous joy. So while we're navigating this precious life that we have, I really suggest we do our best to try to find joy in what we're doing. To me, the most beautiful thing about the Buddhist teachings is it's just honest. I mean, the first thing he said was like, all right, I figured it all out. Let's sit down. Here's what I'm going to tell you. You're going to suffer. He didn't bring everybody together and like, roast marshmallows and sing songs. He said like, here, you're going to suffer. But, your life can also be filled with lots of joy along the way. So try to do things and bring things into your life that bring you joy. For me, it's always been like, we know the end game, right? So find things that bring you joy. And along that journey, you'll just smile more, you'll laugh more, you'll appreciate more. And I'll close with this thought. For me, it was a big part of this practice for the last 19 years was so much of my life early on, no matter how much I had, was not appreciating anything. And for me, part of cultivating and experiencing joy was learning to appreciate all that I had. And part, I keep going back to the planning word, but part for me, in all of my plans that I was making early on that brought me so much suffering, a lot of that planning had a lot to do with not appreciating everything I already had. So for me, so much of my planning was to get more, to be better. It was always about more or better or different, because there was zero appreciation for what I had. And when you can appreciate what you have, that literally every single thing, person, place, and thing in your life right now is enough. When you can truly embrace that and embody that, that you don't need anything or anyone else, that's where joy arises. So that's what the Buddha called bodhicitta, Buddha nature. It's within all of us. It doesn't come from the outside, it comes from you. So with that, I'll close. We'll join palms, do a transfer of merit. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to the nearly 6 million lives that have been lost during this pandemic, and to the family and friends who suffer to this day, and to all of those in Ukraine and the surrounding areas that suffer at this time. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So just a few quick announcements before y'all head out. Thank you for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple 15 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. So thanks for showing up. Every night we have different practices going on. Majority of our in-person schedule is back. So we sit here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, and Saturday morning. Our recovery Sangha meets Sunday morning, 10 a.m., and Tuesday night downstairs. This class on Saturdays and the Tuesday night recovery Sangha does require an RSVP. Every other class we can show, you just show up. Monday through Friday, we sit at 8 and 8:30. It's a silent meditation in the morning. There's no class. There's no talking. It's just a bell hits and you can start your day with 25 minutes or up to an hour of silence. So that's from 8 to 9, Monday through Friday. We shut down for 18 of the last 24 months. So it is beautiful to fill this temple again with people. It was really challenging looking out and talking to myself for a year and a half. So I appreciate you all being here. I do love all you YouTube people, but it is great to actually sit with people in person. So thanks for being here. Same thing, Buddha for You was shut down for 18 months. It's open. It's downstairs. If you need anything, that's there. And Karen, raise your hand. You sticking around? I don't want to. Okay. So Karen's right there. Karen and some others will be outside doing a little gardening, sweeping up, cleaning outside if you want to help. Let's just make sure we get everything back how it was. Thanks for being here. Be safe, be well, and good luck. We'll see you soon. Thank you. Good to see you, Mike.